The music stopped. The clinking of crystal glasses ceased. In a room full of dangerous men and size 0 supermodels, the most feared mob boss on the East Coast just grabbed the curvy, plus-size accountant and pulled her onto his lap. The entire room went dead silent. Here's what happened. The heavy gold-leafed doors of the Sapphire Room at the Grand Oakhaven Hotel swung open, spilling the intoxicating scent of expensive cigars, rare truffles, and spilled champagne into the corridor. Harper Evans stood at the threshold, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She adjusted the bodice of her emerald green silk dress, taking a deep, shuddering breath. Harper was a fat woman, beautifully and unapologetically heavy, with lush, thick curves, a soft, round belly, and full thighs that the bespoke silk dress draped over with deliberate elegance. In her everyday life, her size was just a fact of her existence, something she dressed impeccably and carried with pride. But stepping into the annual winter solstice gala of the Castellano Syndicate was like stepping onto another planet. Here, the women on the arms of the city's most dangerous men were razor-thin, engineered for display, with sharp collarbones and hollowed cheeks. As Harper stepped into the opulent ballroom, the judgmental stares hit her like physical blows. She wasn't supposed to be here. Harper was a 25-year-old forensic accountant working a windowless cubicle at Mercer & Co. on Madison Avenue. For 2 years, she had quietly crunched numbers, completely oblivious or willfully ignorant that her mid-tier accounting firm was the primary money laundering front for Dominic Castellano. Dominic. The name alone made seasoned detectives sweat. At 32, he had ruthlessly consolidated the fractured East Coast families into an airtight empire. He was a phantom, a myth wrapped in custom Italian wool, known for executing traitors with the same cold detachment he used to sign checks. Harper had never met him. But 3 nights ago, working late under the flickering fluorescent lights of her office, she had found it. A ghost in the machine. A discrepancy of exactly $4.2 million, siphoned off through microtransactions, masked as legitimate equipment depreciation for a shell company based in the Cayman Islands. The money was being funneled into a private offshore trust. Being exceptionally good at her job, Harper traced the digital footprints. When she realized who the accounts belonged to, terror had frozen her blood. She had bypassed her immediate supervisor, a nervous, sweaty man named Mr. Henderson, and sent an encrypted email directly to the top floor's anonymous tip line. "Someone in your inner circle is bleeding you dry. I have the routing numbers." She expected an email back, perhaps a quiet firing. Instead, yesterday afternoon, a man built like a freight train named Bruno had arrived at her tiny Brooklyn apartment holding a garment bag and a black envelope. Inside was the emerald dress, tailored perfectly to her plus-size measurements, as if they had been watching her for weeks, and a heavy cardstock invitation with a single, handwritten line. "Bring the flash drive to the Oakhaven at 10 p.m. Don't be late." Now, the brass pendulum of the grandfather clock in the corner of the ballroom signaled 10:15 p.m. Harper was late. The subways had stalled, and her cab driver had gotten lost in the labyrinth of the Upper East Side. As she navigated the crowded, dimly lit room, the conversation seemed to lower to a hostile whisper. She felt the eyes of made men, capos, and corrupt politicians tracking her progress. She didn't blend in. She didn't look like a mob wife, and she certainly didn't look like a highly trained assassin. She looked like exactly what she was, a brilliant, curvy, terrified civilian carrying a silver clutch that contained a USB drive capable of tearing the Castellano family apart. Well, well, it seems the kitchen staff got lost. A syrupy, venomous voice purred. Harper paused. Blocking her path to the elevated VIP section was Vivian Mercer. Vivian was the daughter of the firm's founder, a striking, skeletal blonde wrapped in a backless silver gown that clung to her fragile frame. Vivian was widely rumored to be Dominic's soon-to-be fiancée, a strategic alliance between old money and new blood. "I'm not lost, Miss Mercer," Harper said, trying to keep her voice steady, though her hands trembled. "I was told to come here." Vivian's eyes raked over Harper's full, soft figure, her lips curling in undisguised disgust. "Told by whom? The buffet manager? You don't belong here, Harper. You're an embarrassment to my father's firm. Turn around, waddle back to the freight elevator, and maybe I won't have you fired on Monday." A few enforcers standing nearby snickered. The blood rushed to Harper's cheeks, a hot, humiliating flush. But she clutched the silver bag tighter. The flash drive felt heavy in her palms. She knew what was on it. She knew who the thief was. "I need to speak to Mr. Castellano," Harper said, lifting her chin, her voice ringing out just a fraction louder than she intended. The snickering stopped. Mentioning the boss's name directly, unprompted, was a severe breach of protocol. Vivian took a step forward, her manicured nails digging into Harper's arm. "You absolute cow," Vivian hissed, dropping the facade of elegance. "You think Dominic Castellano wants to look at you? You're blocking the view. Security." Two massive men in dark suits stepped out of the shadows, their hands resting ominously inside their jackets. Harper's breath hitched. She had made a terrible mistake. She should have gone to the FBI. She should have burned the flash drive. As one of the guards reached out to grab her shoulder, a voice cut through the air like a cracking whip. "Touch her, and you'll be feeding the fish in the Hudson before midnight." The voice wasn't loud, but it possessed a quiet, terrifying lethality that instantly froze the air in the room. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. From the elevated leather booths of the VIP section, Dominic Castellano descended the short velvet staircase. He was devastating. Tall, broad-shouldered and impeccably dressed in a charcoal three-piece suit that cost more than Harper's college tuition. His dark hair was swept back, and his eyes, a striking, cold amber, were fixed entirely on Harper. He didn't look at Vivian. He didn't look at the guards who were now hastily backing away, heads bowed in submission. He looked only at the plus-size accountant, shivering in her emerald dress. "Mr. Castellano," Vivian gasped, quickly smoothing her silver dress and stepping between Dominic and Harper. "I apologize for this intrusion. One of my father's low-level desk jockeys managed to sneak past the door. I was just having her removed." "Vivian," Dominic interrupted softly, "if you do not shut your mouth this instant, I will have it sewn shut." Vivian recoiled as if she had been slapped, her pale face draining of all color. Dominic closed the distance between himself and Harper. Up close, he smelled of cedarwood, dangerous masculinity, and mint. He was close enough that Harper had to crane her neck to look up at him. She expected him to hold out his hand for the drive. She expected a cold, transactional exchange. Instead, his amber eyes softened just a fraction as they traced the curve of her jaw, moving down to take in the full, lush silhouette of her body in the custom silk. "You're late, Mia Cara," Dominic murmured, his voice a low, gravelly vibration that sent a shockwave straight down Harper's spine. The L train was rerouted," Harper stammered, her corporate professionalism entirely failing her. A ghost of a smirk played on Dominic's lips. I sent a car for you. I don't get into black-tinted SUVs with strange men named Bruno. Harper shot back defensively, immediately clamping her mouth shut. Did I really just talk back to a Mafia don? To her absolute shock, Dominic chuckled. It was a rich, dark sound. Pragmatic. I like that. He reached out, his large, calloused hand gently wrapping around her thick, soft wrist. The contact sent a jolt of electricity through her. Come with me. He didn't wait for her to agree. Dominic turned and led her up the velvet steps into the VIP section. The eyes of the entire underworld were burning holes into Harper's back. At the center of the raised platform was a massive, semicircular leather booth. Seated around it were the capos, a grim-faced Russian representative named Grigori, and Vincent Romano, a rival boss. They all fell silent, watching the strange procession. Dominic didn't gesture for someone to bring Harper a chair. He didn't tell her to stand at the edge of the table. Instead, Dominic Castellano sat down heavily in the center of the plush leather booth. He tugged gently on Harper's wrist, pulling her toward him. Harper stumbled, losing her balance on her high heels. With a swift, fluid motion, Dominic caught her by the waist and pulled her directly onto his lap. The music stopped. The string quartet in the corner faltered in shock. The clinking of crystal glasses ceased entirely. The sapphire room went dead, horrifyingly silent. Harper gasped, her hands flying to his broad shoulders to steady herself. Her soft, heavy thighs were draped over his muscular legs. Her full hips nestled perfectly against his waist. In a society that valued razor-thin aesthetics, Dominic was publicly holding a heavy, plus-size woman, like she was the most precious, delicate treasure in the world. He wrapped one strong arm securely around her waist, anchoring her to him, while his free hand casually reached for his Scotch glass. "Dominic!" Vivian shrieked from the floor below, unable to contain herself. "What are you doing? She's a nobody. Look at her. She's a fat, pathetic—" Bang. Dominic hadn't drawn a weapon, but the heavy crystal ashtray he slammed onto the oak table echoed like a gunshot. The silence deepened, becoming suffocating. "Harper," Dominic said, his voice entirely calm, ignoring Vivian's outburst. He looked up into Harper's wide, terrified eyes. "Do you have what I asked for?" Trembling, Harper opened her silver clutch and pulled out the encrypted black USB drive. She held it out. Dominic didn't take it. "Keep it for a moment," he instructed, his breath warm against her neck. "Tell the room what you told me in your email." Harper swallowed hard. She looked at the terrifying men staring at her. She felt the solid, unyielding muscle of the Mafia boss beneath her, his arm holding her tight, a physical manifestation of absolute protection. It gave her an insane, reckless surge of courage. I audited the Mercer and Company third-quarter ledgers," Harper said, her voice shaking at first, then steadying as she fell back into the comfort of numbers. "There's a $4.2 million deficit. It was hidden using sequential fractional skimming, disguised as depreciation on non-existent warehouse equipment in the Caymans." A murmur rippled through the men at the table. Stealing from the Castellano family was an automatic death sentence. And who holds the encryption keys to those offshore trusts? Dominic asked softly, his thumb gently tracing soothing circles against the soft flesh of Harper's hip, right through the silk. Harper looked down at the floor, locking eyes with the furious, panicked face of Vivian Mercer. "The offshore trust," Harper said clearly, the acoustics of the silent room carrying her voice to every corner, "is registered under a shell corporation named VM Holdings. The IP address used to authorize the transfers matches the private penthouse network of Vivian Mercer. A collective gasp echoed in the ballroom. Vivian's face drained of color, turning a sickly, translucent white. "Liar!" she screamed, her voice cracking. "She's lying! Dominic, she's framing me! Are you going to believe this overweight cow over me?" Dominic took a slow sip of his scotch. He looked at Vivian with eyes so devoid of humanity, it made Harper shiver. "Harper is the most brilliant forensic accountant on the East Coast," Dominic said, his voice chillingly calm. "She found in 3 hours what my own security team missed for 3 months. Furthermore, my men raided your penthouse 20 minutes ago, Vivian. We found the secondary ledgers. We found the burner laptops." Vivian stumbled backward, bumping into a waiter. 2 of Dominic's guards, the same ones who had almost grabbed Harper earlier, moved silently, flanking Vivian, cutting off her escape. "You tried to bleed my family," Dominic continued, the velvet of his tone hiding a steel blade. "And then you insulted the woman who saved my empire." Dominic shifted slightly, adjusting Harper on his lap so she was even closer against his chest. He looked around the silent, stunned room, making sure every capo, every rival, every socialite saw exactly who held the seat of power. "Let me make something abundantly clear to everyone in this room," Dominic announced, his voice echoing in the rafters. "Harper Evans is under my personal protection. Her mind is sharper than any blade in this room, and she is exactly where she belongs." He looked directly at Vincent Romano and the Russian, his eyes daring them to challenge him. "Anyone who questions her place, her brilliance, or her beauty will answer to me directly. Am I understood?" A chorus of hurried, terrified, "Yes, boss," and "Understood, Mr. Castellano," swept through the room. Dominic turned his attention back to Vivian, who was now weeping silently, her thin frame trembling uncontrollably. "Get her out of my sight," Dominic ordered the guards. "Take her to the warehouse. I'll deal with her when the party is over." As Vivian was dragged away, kicking and screaming into the night, the band frantically struck up a lively jazz tune to break the deathly silence. The partygoers immediately turned away, desperately pretending everything was normal. On the raised platform, Harper finally remembered how to breathe. She was still sitting sideways on the lap of the most dangerous man in New York. She tried to carefully slide off, assuming her job was done. Dominic's arm tightened around her thick waist, stopping her instantly. "Where are you going?" he murmured, a genuine warm smile touching his lips for the first time that night. I gave you the information," Harper whispered, her heart doing somersaults. "I should go home." "Nonsense," Dominic replied, reaching up to gently tuck a stray lock of hair behind her ear. His gaze lingered on her full lips, then dropped to appreciate the soft, heavy curve of her hips pressed against him. "The night is young, Harper, and we need to discuss your promotion." The morning after the winter solstice gala, Harper Evans did not wake up to the familiar rumble of the subway, rattling the thin windows of her cramped, drafty Brooklyn apartment. Instead, she woke up swallowed in the sprawling, silk-sheeted expanse of a massive king-sized bed in a penthouse that overlooked the frosty, snow-dusted canopy of Central Park. The air in the room was heavy and rich, smelling of expensive dark roast espresso, aged leather bindings, and the distinct, intoxicating scent of Dominic Castellano. She sat up slowly, the heavy plush duvet falling away to reveal her soft, thick curves. She was clad in an oversized, crisp white dress shirt that Dominic had gently draped over her the night before after carrying her from the private elevator. She traced the intricate, monogrammed initials on the breast pocket, the silk thread smooth under her fingertips. Last night had not been a fever dream. She had exposed a multi-million-dollar theft, systematically doomed a high society heiress to the wrath of the underworld, and ended up in the private sanctuary of the East Coast's most lethal Mafia don. The heavy mahogany bedroom door clicked open. Dominic stepped in, wearing a perfectly tailored slate-gray suit, casually rolling up his starched white cuffs. His amber eyes darkened instantly, shifting from the cold calculation of a mob boss to something feral and hungry as they swept over her lush figure, swimming in his oversized shirt. He crossed the expansive room, the sheer predatory grace of his movements making Harper's breath catch in her throat. He didn't hesitate. He sat on the edge of the mattress, the springs groaning slightly under his weight, his large hands immediately finding her thick thighs. He squeezed the soft, substantial flesh with unapologetic, intense reverence, as if he were holding something priceless. "Good morning, my beautiful genius," Dominic murmured, leaning in to press a lingering, searingly hot kiss to the sensitive curve of her full neck. "Did you sleep well?" "I slept like a woman who just put a massive neon target on her own back," Harper replied, her voice trembling slightly, though she involuntarily leaned into his touch, her pulse racing wildly against his lips. Dominic pulled back, his expression hardening instantly into a terrifying mask of cold authority. "The only target in this city is on the backs of those who are foolish enough to cross us." Vivian Mercer sang like a canary before dawn in the warehouse. She wasn't acting alone, Harper. The shell accounts in the Caymans were a joint venture, a deeply embedded conspiracy to undermine my supply lines. Harper's analytical mind immediately fired up, pushing past her physical arousal and the surreal nature of her situation. "Who is she working with? Vincent Romano?" "No," Dominic growled, standing up and pacing to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out over the city he owned. "Grigory Volkov, the head of the Russian Bratva. They've been trying to undercut our shipping routes out of the Brooklyn Navy Yard for years. Vivian was funding his expansion using my own money." Harper grabbed a high-end tablet from the mahogany nightstand, her thick, nimble fingers flying across the glass screen as she logged into the secure, encrypted servers she had hijacked the night before. "If Volkov is moving Vivian's skimmed money, he won't use traditional offshore banking. He'll use the Sokolov network, masking the transfers through shell corporations dealing in commercial real estate. Give me 10 minutes, Dominic, and I'll bleed his operational funds dry." Dominic stopped pacing and stared at her. An expression of profound awe, mixed with a deeply possessive hunger, crossed his sharp, aristocratic features. In his brutal world, women were typically treated as ornamental porcelain, shielded from the violence and the business. But Harper was different. She was a siege engine. Her soft, heavy body housed a terrifyingly brilliant mind that could dismantle emirs without ever firing a bullet. "You have exactly 5 minutes, Dominic said, a wicked, breathtaking smile curving his lips. "Then I am taking you to breakfast at the Pierre Hotel, and we are going to discuss your new salary." By noon, Harper was officially established as the primary financial architect of the Castellano Syndicate. She operated out of a pristine, glass-walled corner office in the Castellano Enterprises high-rise on Wall Street. She was flanked at all times by the giant Bruno and a taciturn, deadly enforcer named Matteo. But her rapid, unprecedented ascension bred immediate resentment. The old guard, men who had bled and killed for the family for decades, chafed visibly at taking direct orders from a 25-year-old, plus-size civilian woman with no street pedigree. That afternoon, the harsh reality of her new life came crashing back. Harper was leaving the corporate building, flanked tightly by Matteo, heading to the idling armored SUV. The New York rain was coming down in freezing, relentless sheets, blurring the city lights. Suddenly, Matteo's radio cracked with a burst of static. Before the seasoned enforcer could even draw his weapon from his shoulder holster, a matte black utility van slammed violently into the side of the Castellano SUV, shattering the glass and sending metal screeching. Total chaos erupted on the wet pavement. Flashbang grenades detonated, blinding the street in harsh white light. Harper felt massive, brutal hands grab her violently by her thick hair and haul her backward toward the van. She fought back fiercely. She kicked out, her heavy, powerful thighs providing incredible leverage, her high heel connecting with a satisfying, sickening crunch against a masked assailant's knee. The man howled in pain, dropping her. But before she could scream for Matteo, a chemically soaked rag was clamped suffocatingly over her mouth and nose. The acrid, burning smell of chloroform flooded her senses, burning her lungs, and the rainy, chaotic street rapidly faded to total blackness. Harper awoke slowly to the metallic smell of rust, damp concrete, and old blood. She was tied securely to a heavy metal chair in the center of a dimly lit, cavernous shipping warehouse. Her head throbbed with a vicious, pounding ache from the chemicals, but her mind remained entirely clear and razor-sharp. Pacing frantically in front of her was Grigory Volkov. The Russian Bratva boss looked absolutely furious, glaring intensely at a laptop screen resting on a filthy, blood-stained folding table. "You!" Grigory spat, stopping his pacing to point a thick, scarred finger directly at her face. "You are the arrogant Castellano bitch who locked my accounts. $30 million, frozen in transit." Harper took a slow, deep breath, centering herself in the terrifying reality of the room. She looked down at her own body. Her generous curves were bound tightly by thick plastic zip ties, digging uncomfortably into her soft flesh. But she noticed the ties around her thick wrists were cheap, commercial nylon. More importantly, she had leverage. She knew things Grigory didn't. "It's not frozen, Grigory," Harper said, her voice eerily calm, unintentionally echoing Dominic's terrifying, icy composure. "It's completely gone. I didn't just lock it. I routed it through 7 decentralized blockchain tumblers before you even threw me in the back of your van. It's currently sitting in an anonymous Swiss account that only I possess the biometric key to access." Grigory marched forward, his face turning a mottled purple with pure, unadulterated rage. He grabbed her jaw roughly, his thick fingers digging into her cheeks. "You will log into this computer and return my money right now, you fat cow, or I will peel the skin from your bones inch by inch before Castellano even realizes which shipyard you are bleeding out in." Harper didn't flinch. She stared directly into the eyes of a killer and let out a low, genuinely mocking laugh. "You think my weight is an insult? You think because I'm fat, I'm somehow weak or stupid? You're a dinosaur, Grigory. You fight with illegal guns and abandoned warehouses. I fight with advanced algorithms and forensic data. And right now, my automated algorithm is actively compiling a data packet notifying the SEC, the FBI, and the IRS about your illegal underground gambling rings operating out of Atlantic City." Grigory froze instantly, his hand dropping from her jaw. "What are you talking about?" "Before I left my office," Harper lied smoothly, her heart pounding furiously against her ribs, projecting absolute confidence, "I set a dead man's switch on the Castellano mainframe. If I don't enter my unique biometric password every 3 hours, a massive data dump goes directly to Agent Sullivan at the Federal Bureau of Investigation. You have exactly 12 minutes before federal tactical SWAT teams raid every single one of your legitimate front properties. It was a bluff, a massive, desperate gamble cooked up in a fraction of a second. But Grigori's dark eyes darted nervously back to his laptop screen. Genuine doubt and creeping panic seeped into his cold Russian features. "Unlock the money right now, and I will let you walk out of here," Grigori demanded, pulling a heavy black Tokarev pistol from his shoulder holster and pressing the cold steel barrel directly to her forehead. "I need my hands," Harper said coldly, not breaking eye contact. Grigori hesitated, then nodded sharply to a heavily armed guard standing by the door. The guard approached and sliced the thick zip ties with a combat knife. Harper rubbed her chafed, thick wrists, standing up slowly and stepping over to the folding table with the laptop. She didn't open the banking portal. Instead, her fingers flew rapidly across the keyboard, bypassing the warehouse's firewall and accessing the internal closed-circuit security system. She needed to know exactly where all the exterior guards were positioned. She saw them on the grainy feed, but she also saw something else that made her heart soar. On camera 4, the heavy steel exterior loading doors were being silently, systematically breached with thermal cutters. Dark, heavily armed shadows poured into the outer corridor. They were Castellano men. Dominic had found her. Harper looked up at Grigori, a fierce, unapologetic, triumphant smile spreading across her face. "You know what? I changed my mind. Keep the money. It won't buy you out of this." Before Grigori could even process her words, the reinforced steel doors of the main warehouse blew inward with a massive concussive blast that shook the concrete foundation to its core. Thick smoke and blinding hellfire poured into the room. Dominic Castellano strode through the swirling smoke like a mythical, vengeful god of war. He didn't shout a single order. He didn't hesitate for a fraction of a second. He raised a custom-suppressed submachine gun and systematically executed Grigori's inner circle of guards with terrifying, surgical, remorseless precision. Grigori spun around in a panic, raising his Tokarev pistol toward Dominic, but Harper moved significantly faster. Utilizing her substantial weight, her low center of gravity, and her powerful lower body strength, she slammed her shoulder violently into Grigori's waist. The seasoned Russian mobster completely lost his footing, his desperate shot going wide into the corrugated metal ceiling as he crashed heavily to the concrete floor beneath her weight. Before Grigori could attempt to throw her off, a heavy leather combat boot slammed down viciously onto his wrist, shattering the bone with a sickening crack. Grigori screamed in sheer agony, immediately dropping the weapon. Dominic stood over them, breathing heavily. His expensive suit was completely ruined, his face and hands splattered with the blood of his enemies, but his glowing amber eyes were locked entirely, exclusively, on Harper. He reached down, his incredibly strong hands grasping her thick, soft waist, hauling her up effortlessly from the floor and pulling her tightly against his broad chest. "Are you hurt?" Dominic demanded, his voice thick with a raw, desperate, agonizing emotion that the criminal underworld had never once heard from the untouchable Don. "No," Harper breathed out, burying her face deeply into his broad chest, inhaling the sharp scent of cordite, blood, and cedarwood. "I handled him." Dominic looked down in absolute disgust at the whimpering Russian boss writhing on the floor. "You touched what is mine, Volkov, and for that profound mistake, your entire bloodline ends tonight." He didn't even bother to look down as he smoothly pulled his sidearm and put a single, finalizing bullet right between Grigori's eyes. The cavernous warehouse fell dead silent, save for the crackle of the breached doors and the groans of dying men. Dominic's loyal capos flooded the room, securing the perimeter with military efficiency. But Dominic ignored every single one of them. He cupped Harper's face gently in his large, blood-stained hands, his thumbs tracing the soft flesh of her cheekbones with absolute adoration. "You are a queen," Dominic whispered fiercely, his eyes blazing with absolute, unyielding devotion. "You are brilliant, you are ruthless, and you are the most stunningly beautiful woman I have ever laid my eyes upon. You are going to rule this entire city right by my side." He kissed her then, a bruising, deeply possessive, and wildly passionate kiss that tasted of lingering danger and absolute, undeniable power. Harper kissed him back with equal fervor, wrapping her thick arms securely around his neck, anchoring herself permanently to the beautiful monster who worshipped the very ground she walked on. She wasn't just the quiet accountant from Madison Avenue anymore. She was the Don's only weakness, his absolute greatest weapon, and the unquestioned reigning queen of the Castellano Empire. Her reign would be legendary, built entirely on unshakable loyalty, fierce love, and a devastating brilliance that the entire Mafia would forever fear and respect. And just like that, the Castellano Empire found its true queen. Harper proved that brilliance and curves are the deadliest combination in the underworld. But in the Mafia, peace never lasts. A new threat is already watching from the shadows, waiting to strike. Do you think Harper and Dominic can survive the upcoming war? Drop your theories in the comments below. If you loved this thrilling Mafia romance, make sure to like this video, share it, and subscribe for more.